after the great speech from Doro with a strategic view, let's dive into the engine room. We have 3 people here, heads that are really building new space. And let's start with a kind of a 1-minute pitch, who you are, what you're building. Let's start with you, Helen.
Thank you very much. So we are called the Exploration Company, and our mission is to build space vehicles across nations to foster peace and cooperation in space. So how do we do that? We have started with a space capsule, the first space capsule ever built in Europe, which is going to be, of course, reusable, and that we built together with the US. So we'll be certified by NASA, we'll be able to launch this capsule, of course, from Europe, providing the capacity for the first time to bring cargo to space station and then back, and hopefully also human to space station and back. And as I was saying, we're working together with NASA going to certify our vehicle. So that's our first space vehicle. The second one is a lunar lander that we are building together with the UAE, and I hope we'll be able to bring Europe and the UAE for the first time to the lunar surface by the end of the decade. And the last one is a very big rocket engine that we've just started to develop.
A rocket engine?
Big rocket engine that we've just started to develop. We raised about 225 million, which is at that time biggest seed, biggest Series A, biggest Series B ever raised, and we have signed about now 850 million euro of contracts. So I hope next year we can reach profitability.
Great. We will dive into capital and all these things later, but Daniel, over to you, the rocket man.
Thank you. So if you imagine in the 2000 years, from 2000 to 2009, there were about 2,500 satellites launched by all countries, all companies in the world. In the 2010s, it was about 10,000. And if you only take 1% of all of the registered satellites until the end of this decade, to actually materialize, it will be more than 30,000 satellites. There's an exponential curve of satellites getting to space, and we're basically the ones selling the shovels in the gold rush. We're literally transporting all the satellites to space.
You're the Uber.
Exactly, we're the Uber. We build rockets in an automated fashion to actually bring all of those satellites into the right orbit at the right time, right here in our home of Munich. So actually just about a 5-minute ride from here, we're building our new factory, 40,000 square meters, to really make sure that Europe gets put on the map in the space industry.
Right. From the rocket man to the satellite man, Raicho.
Hello everyone, my name is Raicho. I'm founder and CEO of EnduroSat. We are technically a space infrastructure company. What it means in a nutshell is we build satellites and we put to orbit any type of advanced sensors like high-resolution cameras, radars, broadband connectivity. Proud to say that the company is 10 years old. We have launched more than 60 satellites to orbit. Today we are one of the leading satellite manufacturers globally in our segments of the market. And our goal is very simple. We want to democratize access to space data, any type of space data, from cameras, radars, broadband connectivity. Currently, to acquire such data costs between few thousand and few tens of thousands of dollars per gigabyte. We are trying to lower the cost to 1 or 2 euro per gigabyte. So we believe if we have more access to space data, every small, medium-sized enterprise in the democratic world could leverage this data to improve their own businesses on the ground. And we are doing actively so by redefining the way that we build satellites, redefining the way that we operate satellites, and basically for the past 2 years, we keep producing about 1 satellite every 3 days. By December this year, we start producing 2 satellites per day. So we are trying to really put Europe concretely on the map in this area.
Great. And as we talk about new space and how important this is, some people, and even some years ago, it was true to myself, is why the hell space? We have so many challenges here on Earth, and is it really important to go into space, and is it not a waste of time, and what do you want there? So maybe, Helen, starting with you. So why space? Do we really need it? What's in it for us? Why space?
Yeah, for me, there are 3 main reasons. The first one is a huge business. In 2030, depending on the forecast, but it will be around the 1.6, 1.5 trillion business, which is as big as the aviation business. So building airplanes plus operating airplanes, so it's a huge business. So why shall we not embrace this business? Second point, as everybody knows, it's absolutely critical from a defense point of view. We depend from space for observation, communication, positioning. And last but not least, why are you watching sports? Why are you going to theaters? Why are you listening to music? Because we are humans. And as humans, we are explorers. This is one of the greatest beauty of who we are, to push the boundaries, explore our world, trying to understand our world, and this is all what space is about.
But by the way, do you believe that we will live on another planet in the next 10 years or something, or some of us?
In the next 10 years, that's perhaps a little bit optimistic, in my opinion. But in the next centuries, for sure, yes.
Daniel, why space? Why not building cars or other things? You're a very smart engineer. You have all the opportunities. Why did you choose rockets?
You know, when we founded Isar, we competed in the SpaceX Hyperloop challenges, and we won those, and Elon wanted to hire us, but couldn't because we're not US citizens.
Oh, wow.
And so half of the team went to Tesla, but we figured actually we don't want to build cars because it's a bit boring. And so we rather went kind of the rocket way, to building our own version of a rocket company. I think if you want to manage, you know, in companies, people often say you can't manage what you can't measure. So you first have to be able to actually measure, get some data in order to actually manage accordingly to it. Right now, we're not measuring our data enough, so we also obviously can't measure it, we can't manage it. And so that's where, you know, Rachel mentioned, there's so many different types of data. Imagine you could actually see, you know, how many cars are outside, what's the temperature, how much fertilizer do I have to put where, how much water do I have to put into my garden. Right now, it's kind of, there's still entry barriers in the space industry that basically just are reserved for big corporates and nations. Mm-hmm. I think we really need to be able to use space as a tech platform, same as the internet. Everyone here has the internet in their pockets. We don't yet quite have space in our pockets, but I think if we do, we'll just basically, you know, digitize Earth and everything that's happening on it.
Okay. All right, so you started your company 10 years ago. Very, very tough, very cash flow. Not enough fundraising, or a lot of fundraising, but you really start building cash flows. Why space? I mean, it's such a very, very tough environment.
I think we got excited more about the challenge of if you have more intelligence, more information about what's happening in your street, in your town, in your country, and if you make change visible, it will deeply impact and in a meaningful way our society and the businesses on the ground. So I got really inspired by thinking, man, if I open Google Earth or Apple Maps, and I can see live or almost near lifetime the pollution of my street, the allergens, the movement, the how the nature is developing, but not only seeing a nice photo, but actually the metadata behind it, like the actual truthful information, and to understand how it changes. I think this will be an incredible impact for a lot of business on the ground. Just imagine if you're a small logistic company, you own few trucks and few vehicles, and you can optimize the routing that you usually do with your trucks with 5–10%. This is a game changer for this industry. Imagine if you're an insurer and you want to really monitor all the assets that you have just insured. If you're a transportation company and you want to predict the weather in a much more analytical way so that you have less damage, less delays. All of those seemingly small impacts, few percentages optimization of a transportation industry is hundreds of billions of euro per year saved. It's more environmentally friendly. There's like an infinite amount of good cases why. And then I looked into, okay, how do we do that? And at the time that we started 10 years ago, you build satellites with few very traditionally big and respectful players in Europe, that they were used to governments giving them a lot of money, building one-off satellites, explaining everyone how difficult this is and impossible if the satellite doesn't cost like 100 billion or like 100 millions of euro. So I got pissed off and I said, no, there should be a different way to build satellites. Basically for us, the satellites should be nothing romantic, but rather just a flying workstation to orbit. It provides processing capability, power capability, and of course connectivity. So the idea is that as long as we can do these satellites in a way that we can do different missions without having to change the hardware of the satellite for every mission, it's like switching the industry from building tailor-built solutions like Rolls-Royces to switching to Tesla Model 3s. So this is what inspired us, and we thought it will lower the cost of acquisition of data, and we are actively doing that. And By middle of next year, we expect to objectively reach a target of basically downlinking 1 gigabyte of data to a cost as low as 1 or 2 euro, which is, just to give you a hunch, is like 3 orders magnitude cheaper than what it was possible before. And we truly believe if we provide this data to the ground, to any business that wants to optimize, to the governments, to the defense forces, it's a game changer.
By the way, of Munich, for example, is for me the heart of deep tech in Europe and in Eastern Europe, like Mate, who's building Rimac. It's really crazy, like with how few capital people are building companies over there. So respect to Eastern Europe. So that's the idea. So space is big business. Space is making our life better. So that's why the 3 entrepreneurs are building the company. So I hope that you understand why this is really an important industry. But let's dive into the real engine room and also a little bit your head. So you are CEOs of quite important companies in Europe in that space. So what is your next mission? What is the pain point that you feel in the next days? Like, is it HR? Is it raising? Like, give us a little glimpse about what's on your mind, what's on your company. So what are the next months look like? So a little bit look into the engine room and look into your head as a CEO.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Good. So the Exploration Company is 4 years old. So we're still kind of baby age, but we are 400 people already.
Wow.
One, of course, big question is how do we keep the culture? Culture of agility, culture of smart and fast decision making, culture of very low cost. And this is something, of course, which is on the top of my mind.
By the way, are you remote, or are most of the people in one space, or how do you keep the culture up, and how is this going?
Our mission is to build space vehicle across nations, right? Mm-hmm. So we are 4 years old, and we are in Germany, in France, in Italy, okay, in the US, Los Angeles and Houston. And we've just opened in Dubai, in the UAE this year. Okay, well. So we really do what we say. But of course, it comes with some challenges because we have not only different cultures, but also different locations, different time zones. So on the one hand, you miss, let's say, the discussions at the coffee table, where you can uncover problems. But on the other hand, you have to be very, very rigorous with how, for example, you manage your technical configuration. And so we've been developing in-house, for example, a whole bunch of software and also data management, dealing also with security issues, but also ITAR issues, so export control issues, to make sure that we can work together in a safe way, always on the same technical baseline. As an example, always using for every engineer, wherever the engineer is located, the same technical parameters to his or her calculations.
Sorry, one last question. Do you like remote work, or is it like you want to have the people then in that places in the office?
So it depends what you do. If you're a technician, there is no point for you to be remote because you need to work on the hardware. This is very simple. If you're an engineer, let's say the rule we have is that Monday, Friday, you do whatever you want. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you must work in the office at the Exploration Company. And so far, people have been enjoying that. So my first worry, or let's say first concern, is really how to scale this culture of smart, fast decision-making, agility, low cost. And the answer is basically the people we hire if we don't hire the right people. So we try to hire right. We have a kind of demanding hiring process, and we try also to fire fast when we see that it just doesn't match. Important, let's say, question of right now on the top of my head. So in 4 years, we've been able to fly 2 space capsules in space, which is very, very fast. But of course, moving fast also means we took some risks. And let's say the first flight, we couldn't go through space because of an anomaly of the rocket. And the second flight, we went through space. We successfully re-entered the atmosphere. Everything went well in space. We re-entered successfully, but we got a problem with the parachute and basically crashed on the water. So meaning there is still some progress to be done. And we are in the process now where on the one hand we have a very, very high request for reliability because the next flight will be certified by NASA and will we go to the space station, so we must be very reliable. But we also must keep the same speed, and that equilibrium is very interesting in every decision we make. That's one other big challenge, or let's say a big topic in the head right now.
What about your rocket engine? Is this in your head, or is it like only in 10 years and just a small program? Where's this kind?
Right now, the main priority is doing the capsule, where this is the first time in Europe, actually, and first time in the world that we co-finance between private investors, roughly paying 50% of development, and space agencies paying 50% development for a capsule that will go to space station and back. It was done in the US with SpaceX, but SpaceX was paying 10 to 15%, and NASA was paying like 85 to 90%. So we are really pioneering here something new in Europe. We've also, for the first time, a service contract. So Europe is not paying for the development, buying the first mission, and normally shall buy also mission 2, 3, 4. Commitment shall be taken in November this year. So capsule is really our first product, but of course we want to plan for the future. It's clear that someone, perhaps you, Daniel, perhaps other players, will come and we will have to build in Europe a very, very heavy rocket because the big markets up there are mega constellations. We see that with Starlink. We see that in Europe with Square, and there is a huge challenge about launching for as little cost as possible that we don't master yet because we don't master usability and our rocket are too small, and the smaller the rocket, the higher the price. And the second big market, financed mostly by government, is exploration. 80% of NASA's budget is on exploration. Majority of China's budget, space agency is also going to exploration. And for exploration, also you need big rockets. So you need big rocket for mega constellation, you need big rocket for exploration, and for big rocket, you need mega big engine. So we started 2 years ago, a bit more, 2.5 years ago, with a small team, which we are scaling step by step, and we did 3 tests of component already. So it's starting as an R&D project, step by step.
Right. Daniel, the rocket man, what is it the team also, the technology, the next launch? What's going on in your head and your company?
I think for me, probably the biggest challenge is to figure out how fast can you go without breaking the company? Okay. And it's, I would argue, probably, any CEO's job, but it's more easily said than done. And so it is about scaling a production capacity, for example. Right now, Europe is launching basically 1 to 2 rockets a year. Elon Musk is launching a rocket every 2 days. But I would argue the biggest challenge actually in that is not even designing and building rocket, but it's being able to actually manufacture all of those components. So order of magnitude, there's about 100,000 components in each of the rockets. And you actually have to be able to scale that. If you miss one screw, rocket fails. Because if the screw is there, just as a redundancy, it actually gets stripped off the rocket because you want to save mass. Yeah. And so that's probably one of the biggest challenges, actually building the machine behind the machine, not just the rocket itself. Now, of course, we've done the first orbital launch attempt out of continental Europe ever in March this year. We've learned a lot. We flew about 30 seconds. Our goal was to not blow up the pad, and we're happy that we didn't blow up the pad. And now it's really about scaling, and that usually also doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. And so when Europe, and by the way, we've just seen now Germany as yet another country. The German defense minister last week just announced 35 billion euros of investments in space in the next 5 years. But that means, the industry is going to build hundreds and thousands, hopefully, of satellites. But we actually have to be able to even carry them into the right orbit at the right time. And so again, it does come down to how fast can you manufacture, how many can you manufacture, and of course, making sure they're all in good quality.
Okay. Raicho, building satellites at scale. What's in your head? What's in your company going on?
I'm from Eastern Europe, so we have the tendency to have very Spartan-like culture in the company. We want people to be fully in the office. We have a joke that if you come to work, if you don't come to work on Saturday, don't bother to show up on Sunday. So basically, I'm super anti-woke in my view of the universe. I believe people should be in the office, working day in, day out, because we're a purest form of research development, and you need to talk to people that are next basically desk to you. In terms of the challenges, we were building satellites for the last few years. We actually put to orbit more satellites than the entire combined history of Central Eastern European country blocks combined. Now we are quadrupling this in the next year alone. There is a challenge that we learned the hard way, how difficult it is to create a supply chain, to verticalize where you need to verticalize. So now we are opening this new space center and hopefully ramping up the production to 2 satellites the size of a Starlink-like satellites every day. So this would give Europe some kind of capability. The other thing that I really believe is that you defend democracy not by angry tweets or Facebook bot statements, but by superior technology and by deterrence. Basically, you show the bad actors, hey, I have so much more superior technology than you, don't bother to do some malicious act towards my society. And because we are a frontier country to the Black Sea coast, you can imagine that we are deeply more incentivized to move fast and swiftly than what people would be the further you go on the west side of the European continent.
But let's talk about the big elephant in the room, and that's Elon Musk. That's SpaceX, that's Starlink. Basically, he's owning the whole market. That's my view, and we can discuss this. Like 90% of all the rocket capacity is owned by Elon. Starlink is moving aggressively forward and delivering for 99 euros or dollars. High speed, super reliable internet connection. Daniel, starting with you, let's be honest and hear about Europe. So how can you catch up? Is there any chance? Because they have scaled so fast, they now have the perfect engine running and delivering the launches that you just mentioned. Maybe then there's China with 10% completely state financed. So how can we catch up and build in Europe?
So maybe just answer the first question, whether it's even worth doing it at all. Even SpaceX is sold out on the next 2 years on Falcon 9. So, would you tell European governments, fuck it, let's not even try, because it's useless anyway. I'm a very convinced European, and I think we can do better than that and just throw in the towel. So we got to build it, and even if it's hard. Now, on the good news is, European engineers are really, really good. To give you a number on it, after now 3 years of having our rocket engine under operation, we just surpassed the SpaceX Falcon 9 engine performance, which they have been now flying for about 15 years. So European talent is extremely good. We just need to give them the space and the resources in manufacturing capacity, in capital and teams to actually build stuff. And I think one of the downsides in Europe is we always just think of downside protection. Oh, what can we make sure so this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen? I just think generally speaking, we just need to look for the upside potential. As I said, right now, even if only 1% of the registered satellites actually materialize, it's going to be an exponential curve of satellites. And SpaceX can't even serve the market. So I would argue the cake is more than big enough to have a few more hungry people sitting at the table.
Okay. Talk about satellites, Rachel. We also have to admit that Starlink is excelling quite well. So they're launching many, many satellites. Do you have any chance to compete against these scaled businesses?
Absolutely, and I have deep admiration of SpaceX, and I think they're the best innovators in the history of this sector, and that's that. I mean, that's a statistic. I think the space sector, and especially the satellite business, is commoditizing. The satellites are becoming less used to fail, more reliable, and the question becomes price performance. For example, our satellites are off the shelf, capable to be launched to orbit with any existing rocket in the free world, including, of course, we launch quite frequently with Falcon 9s. We are now preparing the new batch of satellites to be ideally ready to be shipped with a Starship, which will give us insane amount of new capability to launch. And in terms of price performance, I'm proud to say that the unit cost of economics that we managed to achieve with our third generation satellites that we just announced, that are as big or slightly bigger than the current Starlink satellites in terms of mass, we are on par with them in terms of per unit production. But on par with them with our first unit, when they stated that their cost will be based on the idea that they will be producing 10,000 units of their satellites. So I think, to completely agree with Daniel, that we have the potential and we have the capability to defend Europe, to create an incredibly impactful businesses. I'm proud to say that we are actually exporting incredible amount of these innovations to US, to Asia, to African countries. And the only thing that I hope it changes a little bit in Europe commonly is this type of sense of nepotism. Because we don't operate in an open market traditionally. If you look into the big programs that the European Commission organizes, like the Iris Squared and others, those are wrongfully organized from the get-go. They basically imagine a tender where they tell you, you could win if you're a tall guy with blue eyes, and they say to everyone else, but you guys can still apply for it.
Yeah.
So instead of going and focusing on transparent, competitive, open market effort, Europeans are still confined with
So the lobby was strong?
How much can I leverage my nationality, my some micro management useless strategy that completely guarantees one thing, that we all stay small at the end of the day. And most European space companies are not profitable. They are losing money like crazy. And the reality is that they are actually victims of that, because they are reliant on their own government to basically bail them out with any type of extravagant contracts or grants. But if you let them compete against the Chinese or against the US market on a fair, square basis, it will be a doomsday reckoning. So as long as we strive for just open market competition in Europe and the winner wins, we all win as a society. And this should be a resounding win for the European ecosystem if our commissioners at the end of the day, they wake up to the reality. Let's just open a competition, tell the world what are our challenges, and whoever solves the challenge wins the market. That's it.
Perfect. So we have 5 minutes to go. So Helen, about capital then. So when I look at, for example, also SpaceX, they have huge amounts of capital because they live in the US, they breathe in the US, so it just bought spectrum for 40 billion, I don't know. So you raised 400, which is respectable. In Europe, great. So how do we have any chance to compete against the US? Or do we get more capital soon, or what's the plan here for Europe?
Just perhaps I'd like to mention 2 points, and I will be fast because of the time. Number one, we can win. In the US, I mean, we are an example of that. We signed 5 missions with American companies because they want competition and they don't want to be dependent only from SpaceX, as simple as that. And they could have signed with SpaceX. So I have 750 million euros signed with American companies who want to fly the capsule that we are producing. And in this market, we are competing directly with SpaceX. The second point, I want to mention exactly what you are saying, Reiko. It is possible to have free competition between startups and corporates, or let's say incumbents, for big programs. There was, for the first time in 23, then 24, an open competition to build the first European capsule. Thales won, we ranked number 1. And in the second phase of this competition, guess what? We are the only winner. So it's possible. Let's do that more and more, because you pay taxes, we pay taxes, and we want the best quality for our taxes. How, let's say, public money being used, would it be incumbents or startup? That we just have to be best. That's what matters. Now on the capital, if we look back to Airbus and the big success, which also gives me hope, about building companies, or give hopes to Daniel and Heiko. At a certain point in time, there's been one clear identified player, and that player has benefited from infinite money from governments. And okay, at that time, let's say, VC was a bit different. So number one, I think we should be very hopeful, because what I see is more and more growth fund willing to invest in deep tech, especially now where the geopolitical landscape has changed and everybody is looking for who is going to provide, let's say, a real defense infrastructure to Europe in terms of transportation and also infrastructure of satellites. And number two, right now we are still at the infancy of our industry, but I'm quite sure we're going to consolidate. And once we'll have 1, 2, 3 new players champion, then the governments will naturally bet on these players, and so to say, will have infinite money. And Europe's been able to invest, so to say, 10 billion in Iris Square, which is way more than what SpaceX has invested into Starlink. So I am not worried about money. We just need to make sure the money is invested with the highest possible efficiency.
And you say then, if there's a winner, which is hard to imagine or tell, even for a VC, but for a government, you say if the government believes something is a winner, then the government money should flow into this company.
This is exactly what has happened with Airbus. We had many players and there was a concentration. This is what is happening in every industry when it matures. Yep. So I would think if we have this conversation in 10 years from now, there will be 1, 2, 3 big winners.
Okay. How do you see then we have a little bit more time I will grab, but the role of the government. Do you also are hoping that the government will fund your company, or do you say no, there's a free market, there's enough demand, and I will sell just my missions and the cargo to space? So what's your view on this?
So first of all, I think the government is not a great entrepreneur.
Yep.
And you're all laughing, but actually, European governments literally designed the European rockets until now. It was literally politicians who said, we need to use this engine on that rocket.
Absolutely.
And the Ariane 6 that, all of you guys happily paid for with your taxpayers' money started development before I was born.
Yep.
And when I heard it, I'm like, what the fuck? It's literally, probably my grandmother's tax money.
Yeah.
And so we figured, we have to change it. Now, where do I see the government? Mm-hmm. They do obviously have a clear need for space technology and space data. And so they should jump into that role of an anchor customer. Say, we buy the services instead of, hey, let's build the rockets ourselves. You don't buy, you don't build your car yourself, but you actually buy a car that somebody else is building. And so I think the same role should go for the government, whereas they should actually have always, ideally, multiple options to choose from, so that also that one single company cannot just turn up the heat and say, I'm going to charge whatever I want.
But the government is not, they're buying some cars, but they're not strategically buying cars. So the question is, should there be a normal economy living then, in the end, selling the data? So you say, I am the Uber, I'm the cargo bringing guys up, and somebody has to have a viable business model in space that then will buy my Uber services? Or do you say the government should also kind of stimulate that and put money in missions?
Well, the government, again, is going to do missions for their own need. And those are the missions they're going to pay for. If you take the German Defense Ministry,
okay.
Well, it would be great if the German Defense Ministry actually knows if Germany is being fired upon.
Yeah.
Right now, Germany does not have that capability.
We
just depend on the US, right? So that would be great. So, I'm happily giving my taxpayers' money to our defense minister to build a satellite that can actually detect if somebody else is firing their ICBMs on Germany.
Makes sense.
So then, of course, that's a satellite that's to be built, can be contracted to the Rachels of this world, and can be launched with our rockets, or anybody else's rockets for what it's worth.
Makes sense. As this is blinking red, Raicho, just keep it very brief, unfortunately. What's your view on government involvement?
I don't like government. This is the first thing. And secondly, I think, but honestly, I think we just need to have open, transparent way of looking into things. When society major problems are evident to everyone, we should just call them and say, listen, whoever solves the challenge, we don't pay for the path to solve the challenge. We pay you for the solution. You as an entrepreneur, you Frank as an investor, go figure out how to solve it. And from 10 or 20 or 500 different options, the winner, whoever is the winner, the society wins because you preserve the most important, the taxpayers' money. You only pay for the results of the given transition or solution, and you are not picking the winners. Picking the winners, like Daniel said, they choose which rocket, which engine, and they try to combine. Imagine how many astrophysicists and smart engineers there are in the parliament.
Yeah.
At least in the Bulgarian one, I'm pretty sure that it will be a rare case of phenomenal situation. So basically, why would these people not just say, listen, this is the challenges, this is how much we could afford to pay as a society for those to be solved. We are not telling you how to solve it. We are not defining the solution. We're just giving you the challenge. You have one year, a decade, whatever the acceptable timelines for the different challenges, go solve them.
3 CEOs building new space in Europe. Thank you for all the effort that you're putting in, and hopefully a great future in Europe. Thank you so much.